All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, How to Host a Virtual STEAM Night. I am so thrilled to have everybody here today. My name is Melissa Tui, and I am the EdTech and Adoption Specialist here at Ozobot. And today I'm going to be joined by our certified educator, Kristy Braaksma, who is going to be leading the session about how she's hosted a virtual STEAM night at school amongst all the challenges with COVID-19 and school shutdowns. She's led a successful STEAM night at her school, and she's here to share all about it with us. See, I do want to highlight some of her incredible lessons that are in our lesson library. We have created a short URL, so if you go to ozo.bot/Kristy, which is all in lowercase, it is case sensitive, you'll find a webpage that brings up her two lessons that are in our lesson library. If you're looking for more lesson inspiration, if you go to Ozobot Classroom, which is absolutely free to sign up and to have an account with, you can browse our lesson library for more inspiration as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kristy. She is going to introduce herself, tell us about yourself. And Kristy, if it's easier for me to stop sharing my screen so that you can control the slides, I'm happy to do that as well. Would you prefer that?
That might be easier.
Great.
Whatever works is fine.
Perfect. I will stop my share and hand it over to you. Welcome, Kristy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and pull up the slideshow here. Move this out of the way. Well, good morning from sunny Arizona, or good afternoon if you're joining us from the east side. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, Ozobot, for hosting me today. This is really exciting for me to be able to share our journey at our school, which is really exciting. Just give you a little overview of myself, that I'm finishing up my 19th year of teaching. So I am full on love the education world. I started anywhere from I've taught anywhere from kindergarten to 8th grade. And the last few years of my journey, I've been specifically a technology specialist in my district. I am fortunate to work at a gifted academy. So my students are primarily gifted students that have some amazing ideas and things to share, and they teach me new things every day. So I hope that you're learning from your students every day as well. So I am excited to share with you what we have to do today. First off, one of the ways that I have learned and kind of grown over the last few years that I thought I would share with you are some professional affiliations and different memberships that have really taught me a lot and have expanded my knowledge to be comfortable to be able to even start to think about hosting a STEAM night online. Obviously, the Ozobot Certified Educator was one of my first affiliations as a technology teacher, and it has been just awesome. So much fun, great resources, and a fabulous group of people that I learned from. Just following them on Twitter has been amazing. But there's also things like ISTE, the International Society for Technology. They have been amazing. I've attended their convention a couple of times. This summer, it's now was moved to November, where I will have the honor to present some fun things there this coming November. ISTE has local affiliations as well. Our local affiliation is it's called AZTEA. But if you would like to join your affiliation of wherever you are in the nation, I listed that there for you as well. CSTA, I have just about a year experience with them, and I get so many wonderful resources in their emails that they send to me that I highly recommend it. This year they're hosting a virtual summer conference. It is incredibly cheap to join, and some amazing resources from our littlest of our coders all the way up to our big kids. So I think it has a lot to offer for the majority of our educators. And then again, the Texas Computer Education Association has a great online community that I learned quite a bit from. And our state superintendent's office sends some pretty wonderful resources as well. So if you have that, I would look into that in your state as well. I'm always looking for ways to connect with other educators, and I can imagine that you are too. You're here and wanting to know more. So I encourage you to check out some of those things. So in a typical school year, the last few years I've been a technology specialist. So I have about 700 students and they rotate in and out of my classroom from kindergarten to 6th grade. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of a look of what does that coding experience look like in my classroom before we talk about what it's now doing virtually. So in my classroom, for my littlest of coders, I have kindergartners, and those little coders I use Ozobot's K6. So my Ozobot experience with my students is vast, from the very beginner coder all the way up to those advanced coders. With my 6th grade gifted students, they are still very much love using Ozoblockly and figuring out new ways to use their Ozobots. One of my favorite things to do with my coders is to 3D print helmets, and they're helmets that fit right on top of the top of an Ozobot. So when I have 700 students, I think about how can I get them to use these Ozobots all day long, but create stories and be able to use them in different ways. And so I have a couple of 3D printers that I print helmets. And if you just go into Tinkercad and you I'm sorry, not Tinkercad, Thingiverse. Go into Thingiverse and just search for an Ozobot helmet. It will come right up. And I give each of my students a helmet, and then I allow them to design. So they add feathers or hats or googly eyes or all the things that would separate their Ozobot from others. And then those helmets are easily removable from class to class to class. So we do some really fun things with our Ozobots. I love them. I challenge students to create 3D Lego maps that they then code, and then they have these obstacle courses. So some are really simple for our beginner coders, and others are quite advanced. One of the hardest ones that my students have designed is a NASCAR racetrack. And you would think that that kind of circular oval motion, it would be simple, but it's really not simple. And so my students have a wonderful time designing and coding using those Ozobots. I use a variety of robots and coding platforms. So I'm fortunate to have Sphero Bolts, which are fantastic. They partner very nicely with the learning my students have already done through Ozobot. I have Wonder Workshop, they're Dash and Dot robots. And then I have some great online opportunities for kids that you are obviously welcome to use as well. There are some that are app only, so iPads or tablets are the best way to access those, but most of them are online and free to use. One of my favorites to use with my coders, beginning all the way to advanced, is the Apple's Swift Playground. It's a wonderful app allowing students to really scaffold their learning and really learn those basic fundamentals of some computer science thinking that we want them to do. And so I love that. My advanced coders, my 5th and 6th graders, those of you that teach middle school and high school, I would encourage you to check into Microsoft Make Code. If you haven't already, it's a completely free program, platform, all web-based, and it has very interactive simulators right there on the screen. So my students, I'm able to give them a challenge, show them how to do a few things, and then let them run with it. And although I have the devices in my classroom, they can download and they can use their program and create that device into whatever project that they want to incorporate that into. It's not at all necessary. And so Make Code is one of my personal favorites that I've been using quite a bit. Since we've been home, my opportunities as a teacher to get in front of kids have been limited, which is fine. That's the nature of where we are right now. So those remote coding opportunities for my students that I'm providing from kindergarten through 6th grade, these are all online platforms that we have access to. CodeMonkey is fantastic. It does have a subscription fee to it, but my youngest coders are really, it walks them through exactly what to do on screen so that they can learn to code right along with us. I just introduced them to Ozobot's Ozotown, which they were absolutely thrilled. I was able to get in front of some 2nd graders in a virtual platform, introduce them to that, and they tuned me out very quickly because they were off and running. So just a wide variety that can be obviously used in different ways. And there are some things that can be brought down to your beginner coders and up to your advanced coders. I'll just point out the Beans. It's a magazine for kids, all based on coding and computer science concepts. And so students can really easily get in there and search for different topics. I love to use that to help connect to the classroom of what they're doing and support our reading goals on our campus, reading and writing. And so it's just a great way for students to read about some really innovative things. And it's updated quite often, which has been great. So our remote learning looks different. I don't have devices to put in front of my kids, but the feedback I'm receiving is that they are truly enjoying what they're doing at home. And so, use any of these resources for your learners, and they might apply in different ways than they do in my classroom, and that's great. They're wonderful programs. So I started to think about this STEAM night and what that would look like in a virtual world. Our school decided to take just slightly of a different approach to a virtual night with our families, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But a typical STEAM night, if that was our focus, if STEAM, these would be some resources that I would put in front of our families. So the science and math there, kind of underneath the title, I found some digital breakout games, and they're kindergarten through 12th grade. My younger students are the ones primarily using them at the moment, and they've been fantastic. And there's 10 digital breakout games for each grade band. And so they're at a level, there's math and science and some really great content in there, along with just some real fun that students can have. Technology versus for you, focused on some digital citizenship, how we can keep kids safe online is a real big for me, and some different games and things that might be helpful. Engineering, one thing that I love to do with students is stop motion video. It's one of my favorite things that I've done, and I tend to introduce it with a video called Stand Up Tall. And Stand Up Tall is a stop motion video created by I believe it was an art teacher, an elementary art teacher, and he took an entire school year to create this video with his students. And they designed everything that went into that video, from the lyrics, from the music, to all the set design and all the technical pieces needed to capture that video and edit. And so I usually start by introducing them to stop motion with that video, Stand Up Tall, and then I show them the behind the scenes video. And that video goes into how did they do certain things. It's just a short way to get my students really thinking about what they can do. My most recent stop motion video in the classroom was with Ozobots, to where they had helmets, they designed characters, we created stories similar to a Stand Up Tall video, and I had the students record those in stop motion using our Ozobots. And so they had to code, they had to release that code, get their characters doing what they wanted them to do, and capture that in a stop motion. And they turned out amazing. So I gave you those examples if that's something that interests you. Some 3D design, great 3D design going into Tinkercad, and then things like Thingiverse, where you can give students some ideas out there and they can build those differently in Tinkercad. I love the Design Squad. They have some really fun resources and experiments to do in there. So there's just some great engineering resources for you. And art. Art is a great, there's so many digital art platforms out there. One of my favorites to use with students is called Piskel Art Maker. You create animations using sprites. And so it teaches them about what is a sprite, what is an animation, how can I make this thing move? And so that's been really exciting to see my students do that as well. So there's just some great different options there for you for a STEAM night. All of them can be done in a virtual world. And so that's kind of where I want to go next. Before that, these are some resources. So full disclosure, I'm not a high school person, but I do have friends that are in high school. So I asked them to send me some of their best resources that they have used to teach STEM in a variety of different ways. A lot of them were science-based, so I wanted to put them in there for you. There are some simulations and some great options for some of your high school kids to have some virtual way of participating in a STEAM night. And the whiteboard technology I'm finding is incredibly helpful as we're trying to teach in this virtual world. Two of my favorites are Screencastify and Jamboard, but I gave you just a whole variety of them, and even more exist. So use what's right for your district and your platform that you have access to. Those work really well for me. So I'll introduce you to our school. I am from Knox Gifted Academy, and every year we do what's called a Maker Fair. We are now into our 6th annual Maker Fair that we just finished. This year, obviously, having to pull that into a virtual platform, we thought, I don't even know if we can do this. And thankfully, I work with a group of educators that are really dedicated to our student experience, and they didn't blink an eye at putting our Maker Fair into a virtual world. And so we just finished our 6th annual School Maker Fair. But to give you a little background, a Maker Fair is what they call the greatest show and tell on earth. It celebrates creativity, innovation, just all of these most amazing maker ideas. And so a lot of these maker ideas absolutely fit into STEAM. So we work with our students to create blueprints and to have all kinds of research and things that go into their projects that really tie into all the facets of STEAM. So ours might look just slightly different than yours will, but we centered ours around the Maker Fair. I was privileged enough a few years ago to actually attend the Maker Fair in Southern California. So these are my pictures from the actual Maker Fair, where they use different mediums. So the tapeogami was something I was floored. I never thought about using tape in different ways. And yet these students and people have created an entire community of tape, which is so fun. Lots of robots and everything that is creative and resourceful, and how can we make something new and different and exciting. And so our virtual STEAM night was what we called our virtual Maker Fair, which we called the online edition. So when we started to do that, thinking about how do we produce this online virtual night with our families, we went back and forth through a lot of different options. Do we do a live STEAM night where we are live streaming and children are getting on at the same time and participating together? Or do we host a STEAM night to where students and families have a few days to be able to post their projects, and then we kind of come back together in a set time to celebrate that work? And so as we discussed back and forth, we decided that our best option was to not host a live STEAM night. In fact, I've done that before I've had the privilege of hosting a Microsoft game night with my families, and that was live in the moment, and that had lots of challenges. I had about only 30 families in there. And so just the technology alone, getting those 30 families up and running was cumbersome. And I couldn't imagine doing that with an entire campus. And so we decided as a campus to do what we chose 2 platforms. And those platforms we chose are Flipgrid and Padlet. So both of these platforms have been kind of tried and true on our campus. Our students, although most of them were not familiar with them, they had maybe heard about them or seen them. So what I like about them is that they're easy enough to use at home. Families who have no experience using them at all could jump in and participate in our Maker Fair. And so I'll introduce them to you if you've not heard of them. Flipgrid is a super easy way for students to add a video response. So it's as simple as a teacher giving a prompt, a student can go on, click a plus button, record their video, upload their video. It's seamless, it's incredibly user-friendly from the student perspective on the user side, and on a teacher side, it was incredibly easy to set up and to monitor. So one of my favorite things about both of these platforms is that you can moderate them. And so what we did on our campus is our teachers led the way with students in developing their projects, going through research and blueprinting and prototyping and kind of doing that work. Myself and my team of other specialists on our campus, we took the responsibility of the online platforms. So we created these platforms, set them up for easy use on our end of our families, and we moderated those. And so it was super fun to get to see all of those posts, and then that way we could prevent any shenanigans that might be happening. Or we know they're still kids and they are in instant gratification, so if it posts right away, then let me post 12 times. And so we were able to really monitor and keep a handle on what was going on those platforms. We also chose to include Padlet because we've noticed that not all of our students are in any way comfortable with a video type of platform, and so we wanted to give them an outlet to include different files. So in Padlet, it's a virtual bulletin board, and you can curate a whole variety of different media. So we had students posting just one picture. They could link it to maybe a website or something that they created. They could create something in their Google Docs, and they could upload and link that with a shared link. They could just write a text in there. So it could be just as simple as a couple of sentences of what they did. But they could share in kind of an endless variety of ways. We had probably half of our population participate in our virtual Maker Faire, which was very exciting. We've not had 50% of our population participating in our virtual classrooms right now through our online learning. So it was a great success for us. We were quite happy with that. We also can keep them pretty private and keep them in a secured atmosphere so that our families would feel confident being able to post and know that they're somewhat secure behind. Not everyone can find them through just searching for them, which is great. So there's hidden links, there's way to keep them private, and there's ways to shut them off, which is what I love as well. So we opened it at a very intentional time, and we could shut them off very intentionally, so that by the time we ended up giving our students about 4 days, so families had an opportunity to post. Before that, they had worked about 4 weeks of creating their projects and doing those things. So in terms of actually getting them into this virtual platform, we gave them 4 days to post. Myself and my specials team, we were the moderators. So as we saw them, we would go through and view them all for appropriateness, which thankfully 100% they were just great. And then kind of at the same time, the 5 of us as specialists, we went in and just approved them all. And so it was a super easy, streamlined kind of process to very quickly go in and approve everything at the same time. So then we had a virtual Maker Faire on one particular day. Families could come back in and they could kind of see them all at once and have a celebration of all of the opportunities and the projects that students were very proud to show. So there are a few things I thought I would mention that would be things to consider, potential pitfalls that you might run into that I know we did, things that might help set you up for success. One of those things is to make sure that you have a committee. So there has to be a pretty strong buy-in from your staff to be able to have a virtual STEAM night. I don't know that one person with great intentions and a thriving, I'm going to go do this energy, I don't know that it would come off as well. I think the success of our online virtual night with families was because we had a committee committed to doing the work. And so it took work moving into that. And then by the time families started posting, it was just a beautiful celebration by the end. And so really having that buy-in of grade levels, administration, whatever that looks like in your setting, just we checked in once a week, we brainstormed together, we made sure we were all on the same page, and that was really key. Making sure you have a clearly communicated plan. So even though we met weekly and we had everything in writing, I still noticed there were some hiccups along the way where things weren't always communicated consistently, but they were close enough that it worked for what we did. So I think it could have been a disaster if we weren't really clearly communicating 100% of dates and things that we needed families to know. We created a shared document, whatever that looks like for you. For us, we have a shared Google Drive where all our staff is present in that drive and has that editing right. And so we collaborated as a staff very easily, and from a virtual world, we're all home. So we were able to virtually create that document and documents and be able to really have everything there. Having those links to our Flipgrid and our Padlet were essential. So they were in a common space our teachers and families are used to finding, and so they were very easy to find and share out with our families. And then create a team committed to moderate. So I think it was highly successful that the team moderating this virtual platform or these platforms were not the same people that were implementing and answering questions with families. So I think that was super important as well. Some things to keep in mind, virtual communication on a large scale is very hard. And so it's easily misinterpreted. Really think about that clear communication plan. When you're hosting a live STEAM night with students, participating in a live, in the moment live stream seemed nearly impossible for what we were trying to do with the technical issues that we were troubleshooting. So for those 4 days while families were trying to upload and post, the 5 of us, we were all day long troubleshooting emails of I can't get this uploaded and how do I do this thing. And so that just make sure you have time and people dedicated to being able to troubleshoot those technical issues, because there will be technical issues. And your families will get frustrated and eventually they'll just drop out. And so we want to make it as streamless as possible. And then a firm time frame we felt was really important for our families to know. You have these 4 days, but those 4 days were over a weekend. They had evenings. There were different times of the day, so that as we are kind of acting with empathy as in how their family homes and households are running in a virtual world right now, they're so different because of the situation we're in. So just being sensitive to your population and consider what would be equitable for them and make the best decisions for your population. So that kind of in a nutshell is how we ran our Maker Faire. It was incredibly successful with over half our population very much engaged and enjoying it. And then, of course, they took to social media saying thank you and how much they loved it. So for us, it was a great experience. And I would encourage all of you to give it a shot, see what you can do. And from the family end of it, it was a huge success, and they appreciated that. So, Melissa, I think that's all I had to share.
Yeah, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Kristy. This is so informative. Absolutely wonderful, all this content that you've shared. My mind is going crazy about how this could be implemented in any school across the country. Some questions that we have, I think we'll move on to Q&A now. Something that I was wondering about, equity is always a concern, no matter where you're teaching, no matter what context you're in. Could you talk about maybe any equity issues that maybe you ran into and how your school and your team resolve those issues? Does anything come to mind?
Absolutely. So we are fortunate enough at our campus to be a one-to-one device campus. However, when we went on spring break and now we're home, and we never were able to return to our campus, we came to find out 100% of those devices are not accessible for children outside of our network. So they are completely useless. So although we are a one-to-one campus, those devices were not able to be utilized. And so we found ourselves in this really sticky, what do we do with families who may not have access to what we would like them to do. And our district recognized that. So our district was wonderful in being able to provide some devices depending on the situations, and made everything optional and an enrichment opportunity. And so everything we did came from a lens of enrichment and how could we bring access as equitably as possible to our students. And so with our families, we did some surveying of our families. We physically called every family and asked, how are you doing? How can we help you? What devices do you have access to? And then we started to design our curriculum, our activities around what they had. So for me as a technology teacher, I really felt handcuffed in a way because their access on the other end was very limited and very, very different. So I went to thinking about, as a school, how do we give kids online opportunities that work on a cell phone? So we have families that their child might have, 15 minutes in the evening where dad hands them a cell phone and they can connect on that cell phone. So between a cell phone and different variety of tablets, old tablets to new tablets, we ran into some troubleshooting issues there where an old iPad is not supporting our new technology that we're trying to meet virtually. And so we just tried to roll with it the best that we could for what the devices were at their home. And I would say a good 80% of our families have the access to participate with us, but they don't necessarily all participate. And so our families were given the option, if you want to bow out and sit this out, we understand, because one of our core values on campus is that we act with empathy. And so we really tried to understand the user output on the other side, what are families going through, what is what are these parents doing now? Have they been laid off? Are they stressed out? Are they overworked? They're just in so many different things that are happening in every family. And so we try to very much understand and be very sensitive to that. So the students that are not able to participate online from our families, we do frequent phone calls. We've done home visits. We make sure that we're at least giving them some of that social and emotional support that we know that they need. And so anything that we can do. I would say next week is actually our last week of school here in our district. And so being able to look at, we did as best as we could in this quarter. If we were to start our school year looking differently, we would do things differently. And so all of that in hindsight, right, is always 2020, but we did the best we could. And I just would say that if you can connect 100% with 100% of students and families, let them hear your voice and know you're there, that goes speaks volumes to them.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. Crystal is wondering, can you provide any examples of activity prompts that you've given to students?
Sure. So some activity prompts that I've given, primarily my students can respond to me in Flipgrid. So I also have a Google Classroom, so it might look differently in those two forms. But I've been asking students in a little bit of a generic way. So I'll take kind of a bigger topic than I typically would. And let's say that 1 week, and I do it different for each week. So 1 week might be digital art. And so I will give them some digital art resources, just like I had in the slide, and I will ask them to create something. And so I might give them a prompt that has to do with animals. So it might be a couple statistics about a particular animal, and then I might ask them to demonstrate or to pick an animal and demonstrate what they can do with it in these art platforms. And so I had students creating, like one of my students created a giraffe, and she did it out of toilet paper rolls and googly eyes and painted it, and that was her way of doing art. She was a kindergartner, to where I had some more sophisticated digital art that came in a cartoon. So one of my sixth graders is a phenomenal artist, and she's learning to do that in a digital world, and she put it into a cartoon. And so she digitally created a cartoon. And so although I gave them some digital platforms, they took them, ran with them or created their own. And then they would get back into Flipgrid and they would tell me about it. So they would say, here's what I wanted to do. This is what I use. And they would show me that art. If it wasn't able to go into Flipgrid, I did have families email me and say they wanted you to see this because they were, so proud of what they created. So those kinds of things have been really fun. My younger students tend to go more toward the building, crafting, pixel art kind of work, and my older students tend to be more in the animation kind of realm and doing things a little more sophisticated.
Great, thank you so much. Ashley she brought up a point. She said she's trying to do STEAM challenges on her own, but she's only about getting six entries in a week. Do you have any suggestions for how to drive up engagement or participation with students that may not be motivated currently in the current situation?
I feel like if I can just we've had those weeks too. We've had weeks where very few students participate and weeks that we're kind of blown away. And so I feel like a lot of it has to do with what they're doing at home. How are students, do we have students that are babysitting younger siblings and can't participate on those days? So, just understanding that that's probably pretty common, I would think across the board. But we've tried to just create engaging, non-risky opportunities for students. So nothing is tied to a big presentation, nothing is tied to something they have to turn in, and we just keep providing these fun nights or these fun activities. One thing my team has done, so we are a team of 5, and our performing arts teacher, she has all of these wonderful games. And so what we have done is we've gotten into a Google Meet and we've recorded ourselves playing these games and then say, now go do those with your families. And so we've had more engagement in that because kids get to see us and hear us and laugh with us, and then they get to kind of move that into the next realm. So each week, one of our specials teachers takes a week to do something fun with our team as teachers, to record that and then to share that out with our families. And so that seems to be the way we end up with the most engagement, is when we have the students actually being able to see us and hear us and laugh. And it's just a video they watch, but then their responses have been much greater.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Jennifer is asking, have you tried teaching STEM virtually as well? And I just wanted to mention that we do have past webinars that we've dived into that topic, and I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. If you go to our past webinars page, you can actually see that we have Shapetracer 1, Shapetracer 2, and Ozotown webinars with slides there that you're welcome to explore. There was also a past webinar with Emma Noonviller, who she actually taught, her kids didn't have Ozobots at home, but she did. She brought some home with her, and she was able to teach digitally that way. So there's some really great resources on our past webinar page that you should definitely check out. And Kristy, I don't know if you have any suggestions for what digital STEM learning and instruction looks like that you can recommend as well.
I would say just take it one step at a time, one concept at a time, and just see how it goes. Our population will respond differently. Your population will respond differently. But I feel like if we can just continue to put out there some engaging and fabulous ideas that will interest students and they can relate to that, then they can go from there. One of the things that I did on that art week is I asked students to create a picture collage of things that they've been doing around the house. And then I provided my own collage. It had a puzzle and it had an Ozobot in it, and it had different, it had a bike helmet because we've been going on a lot of bike rides. And so it was just a picture collage, and then I can interact with my students. So it's not risky. It's not something that's real intense, but it's something that is applicable to them. They can see what I've been doing, and then they can share share that back. So, I mean, we know that kids love to talk, right? And most of them anyway, and they love to share their stories. So, you know, when we get in a virtual Google Meet or something with our students, then, you know, we have to keep muting them because they have more and more to say. And so it's just one of those things of how can we engage them and then make it productive in that sense. So use the platforms you're given, keep it simple. I wouldn't go too extreme, and then let the kids have fun with it and just celebrate that fun with them.
Wonderful. It looks like Laura has a question that I think might apply to more people. She's wondering if you have any tips for how a small staff, she in particular has 2 people with other duties in a public library, can scale these ideas. But I imagine there's probably other tech instructors where this, you know, STEAM and virtual learning is falling kind of all on them. Do you have any tips for smaller teams to implement these types of programs?
Yes, that's a great question. I would say as long as you have a dedicated, even small group of a team, it's possible. It just takes that thoughtful preparation, being purposeful and intentional about what you do. And I would say reach out. So if you're a library, reach out to other cities' libraries and see if they want to collaborate in an opportunity for your kids. If I was alone in this venture, I would reach out to my other technology teachers that we have in our district. Every elementary school has an elementary technology teacher. In fact, I think several of them are on the call with me today. But I would reach out to them and say, hey, can we join forces? And then that way it could be a real collaborative effort. I think as long as you have people who are dedicated and committed to the event and the work it's going to take to put into the event, it's doable. I myself put together the Flipgrid and Padlet and created all of those probably within a couple of hours, being able to really outline what I wanted so that they were there. It doesn't take a lot of work. It just has to, if you're new to the platform, it'll take you a little longer. But as long as you're kind of together with even a small group of people who are ready to do it, I would say do it. Jump in and have some fun, and it gives your families a great way to connect with you while they're bored at home. A lot of my students are bored at home.
Absolutely, yes. Jill is asking, what was your most successful project for first and second grade kids, and then for third and fourth grade students?
So I would say with my little people, kinder, first grade, that's usually an app that their parents can download where I've seen the most success, because it's something that walks them step by step by step. So Grasshopper is a great one. Apple Swift Playground is great for, they have basic coding things in there. Scratch Junior is a great program for our little people. And it really does, with just a little bit of direction that's really easy for them to figure out, then they can create the most amazing things. So my little people, Scratch Junior is probably one of their favorites because they can record their own voice and they can give characters their voice and make fun sounds. But it does really teach them the basics of sequencing and what is a cause and effect and how do these things work. And so I love that type of aspect. I would say right now for my kids, K1, probably Scratch Junior. Second, third, fourth grade area, that's a little harder because they're a little more scattered at what they're doing. But I've seen wonderful things that come out of, let's see, I'm trying to think. I know my older kids have turned into me some really fun make code projects that they've done. There's an arcade game in there that they go in and create an arcade game, and they'll send me the game and say, can you beat this high score? So I just try to connect with them. I feel like my job as a technology specialist is to give my students tools, and in a really fun, exploratory kind of way, and then they play with those tools, and then we together figure out how can you incorporate this into your learning. And so I try to fill their tool bank. And so whatever tools, and so right now I'm just trying to give them more and more tools, whatever that might look like for you guys.
Great. Jake is asking, in addition to students sharing their projects, was there a secondary goal of sharing more remote learning resources for families? Or was there a challenge to go on to and do something that inspired you from the event? Was there any type of extension, I believe, is what he's asking.
Great question. So I would say the Maker Faire was the extension. And so we have used the last 8 weeks to really build up to that kind of finale. And so that was our kind of our finale capstone event that we would do at the end of the school year. So that probably was the extension, but I know our families well enough to know that now our kids are inspired. They have these resources at home. We had a family. The other thing we did is we did allow families to work as a family and submit a project, which was really fun. So we, of course, had siblings on our campus. And so one of our families, mom and dad included, wanted to build a flotation boat, basically, that a family could stand on in the middle of their pool. They wanted to see how that would work. So creatively, the 5 of them, they used pool noodles and PVC pipe and showed the technique of how they are learning how to use these tools and created this huge flotation device that they put in their pool. And then eventually they were all able to carefully stand on that and float in the middle of their pool. And so to them, that was a wonderful way to be together as a family, have something to do together, and it really celebrated their collaboration. And they put that in our Maker Faire night as a family project. So that is another way. It wasn't just each individual child. It could be something collectively that they do in their home. It could be making cookies, and they're showing how they were making cookies. So there's lots of ways that you could extend beyond a STEAM night. But I would, in right now, because it's our capstone event, I feel like the families leading that was a real benefit. And so we made it very wide open on purpose.
Wonderful. Tosin has a question. He or she says, I have 5th grade STEAM Night ambassadors for my event, and they do an awesome job. They actually teach all the activities and they train in class. When you think back to your planning with your committee, are there any responsibilities besides moderator that would be a challenge?
Yes, so I feel like our teachers ran into lots of challenges as they were launching this idea of creating at home and doing a project at home and what that could look like. And so there were challenges with what students had access to. There were challenges with parents being able to be involved and helpful. There were challenges with technology and how to best capture what they're doing so they can submit that to our Maker Faire. And so, yes, so I would say there's challenges definitely along the way. But I feel like when you have educators that have this mission in mind, they're going to jump over all of those hurdles beautifully. And so I feel like that's what we did. We just kept jumping over hurdles until the end. And now that our capstone event is finished, we're actually taking those posts and those things and creating, I don't want to say a highlight video, but a video that now we can send out to families again, just showing and showcasing all of these amazing things that they did at home and celebrating with them. And so I think that's pretty fun too.
Absolutely. Jill was wondering if you could tell a little bit more about Beans Magazine.
Sure, yeah. So Beans is just an online magazine intended for kids, and I do use that magazine primarily 2nd to 6th grade, and it's a computer science-based magazine. And so if you are let's say you're introducing your students to Python, great, what is Python? Let's go read about this. So this becomes a resource, a research-based type of resource for kids, and then they're leveled quite well as well. So there's going to be some reading passages that are a lot easier for our younger readers, and there might be some more sophisticated. And so I use Beans as an intentional resource for my students when maybe I'm introducing a new concept. I have a student who might really be interested in 3D printing. Great, I'm going to go look at beans and see what I can pull out of there that might interest them and get them exploring more on their own. So it's just a great resource, and I also use it for to support our reading goals on our campus. So we're 100% in on our goals as a campus. So just because I teach technology doesn't mean I sit out on those. So if I'm supporting math, then I'm using resources. If I'm supporting reading, I use Beans as one of those resources. So it's a great magazine, and they come out very often. So you can also go back and look at all the magazines from before. So it's just a great wealth of some passages and writing for students.
Wonderful, thank you. Jill is wondering, can we view any of the projects that your students have created this year? Do you share that on Twitter or on your website? Is there any place that you share those types of resources?
Great question. So we, because Padlet and Flipgrid are kind of in that secure setting, we have parent permission to put them there. So we have students that their families have said we don't want them in the media of any kind. And so we're working on putting together that video that kind of is a beautiful representation of what happened. And once we run that through our filter of who can't be shown online and in that no media sense, then I can certainly share that video with you, and then you can send it out however is easiest to connect with the people on the call. But I'd love to do that. So it just has to run through that filter of, we're not quite done with the production of it quite yet, but we hope by the end of next week to have that ready. And then yes, I'd love to share it out with you. I can't add you to our online platforms, unfortunately, just for student security purposes, but I would love to get that video for you.
And maybe what we could do, Kristy, if it's okay with you, we could add that video into the slide deck, and that way when people come back and refer to it, that's an easy place to keep it. So
perfect. Yes, we'll do that when it's finished.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think we have our last question here from Meg. I think she was looking for some clarification. She said Maker Faire. So your Maker Faire consists of weekly activities, not an event that happens at once, or is this not the same thing? Can you just kind of clarify
Sure.
the differences between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of Maker Faire, I will relate it to something like a science fair project. So typically the science fair at the end of this kind of, after weeks of creating a project, is like the culmination and the celebration of those projects. That's similar to what Maker Faire is. So we all school year celebrate creativity, and we celebrate, we challenge kids to be creative and innovative in all kinds of a variety of ways. And so we lead up to Maker Faire all year long. But once we launch the project, it's typically the last month of school. And so that just happened to fall in our virtual world where we launched it virtually. We're able to give students templates and things to help work them through processes. We did lots of face-to-face Google Meets with students, brainstorming ideas and walking them through processes. And so it is a culminating event, I would say, of a lot of hard work that has gone in all year. And so it's kind of that same idea of, we have students that are doing a science fair project, they're trying to solve a problem, and then we work through that process, and now we celebrate them at this event. So I would say that it is an event. It's one big event. If we were to have it on campus, our entire campus would be renovated basically to our Maker Faire. We invite the community, we invite our mayor comes. I mean, it's just a very large community event. Our families come, students are spread out all over campus, and then they're put into groups. So for example, if they have a project has anything to do with food, they go into the culinary arts wing, so to speak. And so all of those projects are there. So it is an event, definitely an event. And we tried to somewhat recreate that online, that all the projects are going to be live on this day. So come in and celebrate with us on this day. So we tried to mimic that, but of course it wasn't the same as being in person on campus. So I would say it's definitely an event, but it's a culmination of this beautiful learning that has taken place all year.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Kristy. It's been so wonderful hearing from you, learning from you. and having you share your expertise with all of our audience. I'm going to move on to some just housekeeping and final announcements. I think I can say for everybody here that this was so enlightening, and we're so thankful for you taking the time to spend with us. So for everybody in the audience, if you are looking to connect with other educators, feel free to join our Ozobot Academy on Facebook in case you're still looking for lesson ideas or just want to get more resources about how to teach STEAM, and especially with the current situation. It's a really great resource for educators to discuss ideas. If you are inspired to create a lesson or to check out our lesson library, feel free to go onto Ozobot Classroom and check out the resources there. If you are new to Ozobot and you're not familiar, feel free to request a demo with one of our STEAM specialists, and you can do that at ozo.bot/request-demo if you are interested in having that demo done. And again, here are some final questions. If you have any questions or need a PD certificate for today's session, please email support@ozobot.com. You can also, once this webinar is ready to be put up on YouTube, we will have the recording on ozo.bot/YouTube, and this recording will be there. And along with our webinar page, the slides from this webinar will also be on our website under our webinar page. And if you want this recording emailed to you once it's ready, you can opt in for updates at ozobot.com. If you just scroll down to the bottom and type in your email address and click subscribe, you'll get all of our webinar recordings sent directly to you. And again, if you have any questions for Kristy, her Twitter handle is at Kristy Braaksma, so feel free to reach out to her as well. Again, we want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. We know that it's really challenging times for educators. We hope that everyone is safe and healthy, and we're all in this together. So if there's anything that we can do to support any of you, please reach out and let us know. Thank you again, Kristy, for such a wonderful morning. Have a great day, everyone.